Welcome to Wealth Strategies Unleashed. I'm Robert Gilliland with Concenture Wealth Management.
And I'm Mike Alexander.
This is our fourth installment, and this has absolutely been a blast and beyond informative. We are very fortunate to have Mike Graci with Blackrock with us to talk about the question that so many people are asking questions, or the topic that so many people are asking questions about, and that's Social Security.
Yep. So one of the things that we've talked about, over the previous podcasts is we've talked about all of the variety of ways that you can access your benefits and the best way to do that. One of the things that Robin and I find vitally important in terms of just the entire planning process is that if we don't, we can do a lot of things as it relates to the investment side, but if we don't get this part right for our clients, it can set us up for failure. But if we do get it right, and it's certainly something that we strive to do, if we do get it right, we can set them up for success and really put them in the right place. So Mike, let's talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that people make when it comes to to accessing their Social Security benefits and doing it the right way.
Yeah, I think Mike and Robert, thanks again for inviting me to your podcast. There are a lot of concerns, right? Or challenges, mistakes people can make when it comes to Social Security. I'm going to start with the first one that's most obvious, and we talked about it earlier on, is that a vast majority of people who start Social Security, they take their benefits because they can, right? Because they have access to those benefits without doing a thoughtful analysis on whether or not they should be collecting those benefits at that particular time. That would probably be mistake number one. Add to that by saying that a lot of people take their benefits because they have certain assumptions that may or may not necessarily be true. One, that they don't expect that they're going to live beyond a certain age, right? And obviously life expectancy is a critical component, and statistics say if you're healthy when you reach retirement age, there's a good chance you're going to live potentially into your 90s, right? A lot of years to create income from our investment plans, right? So
Mike, we tell people all the time, if we know what your last day is going to be, our job is really easy, right? The challenge is we just don't know.
I'm hoping that somebody's going to create an app for that, but I don't think it's happened just yet. So you're right, Robert. That would be the second piece as well. The other issue is not understanding how the different benefit types are calculated. Are spousal benefits something I'm going to be eligible for? What potentially happens to survivor benefits, and recognizing the sequencing of benefits that we talked about in our earlier session is also a mistake that is going to be made. And the third one is the expectation that Social Security, a lot of people are hard and fast and guaranteed in their belief that Social Security is not going to be there when they retire. Yes, we should be concerned about the viability of Social Security. No guarantees in life, right? No guarantees to Social Security. But history and political approaches have led us to down certain assumptions for at least the near generation of retirees, that there will be benefits for them when they retire. And brings us back to the planning discussion, right? Let's plan on what we know, and then let's change our financial plan should the situations merit or need us to do that. But making a blanket assumption about whether or not it's going to be there or not is probably not the best advice to give people.
It's interesting to hear you talk about these three that are kind of top of mind mistakes. As as you go through and you think about it, the thing that we find interesting while we're sitting down with people and we're talking about their financial plan and going through and creating that income plan for them in retirement. A lot of times they come in with this predisposed opinion, just like what you talked about, because their neighbor told them, you need to take it at 62. They start to take it at 62. And as you walk through that plan and look at the different options and what the impact actually ends up being, 62 may be the right age for you. But the reality is you've got to at least, like you said in the last podcast, our job with regard to Social Security is not necessarily to tell you the exact day you need to start to collect it, but to make sure that you understand what the options are so that we can help ensure the outcomes that you want.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Robert. I would say it's a mistake. Maybe the biggest mistake is not having the right advice in your corner to help you navigate the myriad of all the elements that make up this decision. Mike talked about it in the introduction, right? Yes, there are important considerations around Social Security and the various rules that come into play, but we also have to take into account our pensions, our 401ks, our investment strategies, our life, right? Other considerations that come into play. Yes, we talked about longevity, but there are certain situations where people have pre-existing health conditions, right? That's going to impact those plans. The right process takes all of those things into account, right? That's the value of planning, and the mistake is not to take it to that level.
And to kind of take that a little bit further in some of the kind of interactions with clients and some of the ways that we've actually talked about this in the planning, and Mike and I have done this a lot, is that you go through and you think about cash flow in retirement, and you've got these guaranteed sources, right? Social Security being the one that's the most prominent. Does it make sense to take Social Security and let your 401k or your IRA rollover continue to grow because you're going to end up taking less out? Or does it make sense to delay your Social Security? It all is going to depend on what your goals are and where the beneficiaries, the maximum amount to beneficiaries, and what your goal is, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's a valid point. And the answer to the question is it may. And it may not, right? So coming back to my own personal situation, I had cancer, Robert. I had a bone marrow transplant about 5 years ago. I think of my life expectancy as don't think I'm going to be making my 90s, but my wife has good longevity in her family. So we have pensions, we have 401ks, we have investments, right? But we're going to bring all of those things that come into play and say, hey, maybe a hybrid strategy, like we outlined in one of those earlier podcasts, might be an appropriate strategy for us. My wife's starting Social Security, increasing the cash flow. Even with my shorter longevity, I got greater benefits. I want to drive up that survivor benefit for her on the back end, right? Plus the situation we talked about with my son and benefits available to him based on his disability. All of those things come into play. But if I'm single, right, and the Social Security is just based on me, and there are no survivor towards the end, maybe I'm thinking about things a little bit differently, right? Maybe I'm thinking about the tax aspects of my other investments a little more differently, right? Again, the variability of the situation, every client is different, and that's why we need help to kind of focus on these things. But you're absolutely right.
And Mike, I think that may bring us to, kind of to what the biggest mistake is. And that is that obviously the Social Security Administration wants you to think about this as being an individual decision. But I think as you correctly stated, it's not only about you as the individual, it's about, your spouse and your beneficiaries, and how it ties into everything. I mean, all of these things are kind of interwoven. And I know it's a conversation that Robert and I have with clients on a regular basis, which is how do all of these things work together, and how do we get the most out of that plan? And again, if we can get this part right, it sure does give it, increase the odds of success on any long-term planning.
So let me ask both of you, if I turn the tables on you on your podcast here, if I want to engage with an advisor like yourselves around these topics, what are some of the things that I should think about, that I should bring to the table when I want to have a conversation around my retirement with you? When does it start? How does the flow work?
My take, I'll go first and then let Mike talk. My take is that you want to start that now. You want to start that as soon as possible. At the very least, with regard to Social Security, you want to start that on or around your late 50s, early 60s, so you can start to look at that plan, look at what your options are. The key to any good plan is that you're evaluating it every single year to make sure that it's still on track and the decisions that you made are still good, because that's the beautiful thing about Social Security. You may not take it at 62, but things have changed, and maybe 64 might be a point where it does go and make sense. So evaluating that. I think that people, the earlier they get started planning, the better. Now, what are some of the things that they should bring, or what are some of the things that you need to kind of talk about or know? Number one, I think it's vitally important that both spouses are engaged if you're married in that conversation. All too often in a lot of relationships that we work with, one spouse is the primary decision maker when it comes to finances. And what we tell people all the time is that both spouses need to be involved, if for no other reason. If something happens, the other spouse is comfortable and knows who to call to be able to help out. But the reality is that we end up flushing out a lot of details that we need to know, and we can determine, is taking it on your benefit or spousal benefit, or when should you get married, or those types of things all become vitally important to make sure that people are aligned. It makes sense to have a good, clear picture as to what your assets are, what your liabilities are. All this goes without saying, but also a copy of your Social Security statement that you can get online from ssa.gov. Getting those things and bringing them in, the more information that we have, or that a financial advisor has, the better the output is going to be to give you a clearer picture.
Yeah, and I would just chime in and say that, a couple of things that you want to be thinking about on an annual basis, and that is, what's my employment status? In this day and age, it's not uncommon for people to, retire early, for example, or be downsized, or have some situation that occurs. So I think having a proper analysis of that on an annual basis makes a lot of sense. I think the second thing is your health. Seeing where you are from a health perspective, whether you go and get an annual checkup, and just having a good understanding of that, I think helps you make the appropriate decision. Then the last one is, have you had any life change? Is there a divorce? Is there a new marriage? Is there a disability? Is there something else that's occurred? And I think all of those, will help clients, help individuals and families make better decisions as to how to do these things appropriately.
Yeah, I think, Mike, to your point, and Robert, the nature of that openness, that engaging conversation, and what you both illustrated there is the fluid nature of these financial plans over time. We could start here, but we may end up here based on the curves that life has thrown us, and the importance of engaging regularly with you, right? really becomes a critical element, and not an easy one for people to actually do. That element of trust becomes so important. Thank you for sharing.
You know, when you go to look at this to kind of wrap together this series and kind of this journey that we went on, there are ages that are important. And Mike, please step in because I'm going to kind of paraphrase this. You've got age 62 when you can start to collect. Then you have your full retirement age, somewhere between 66 and 67. And then you can get an added benefit at age 70. You can, if you take it at 62, you're going to get a reduced benefit. Understanding the impacts of taking it early if you elect to work in retirement, which more and more people are wanting to do, not from the financial standpoint, but because of the human interaction. And all of that's got to come into play when you're building that plan. Understanding about what the benefits are in the case of a divorce, what the benefits are in the case of someone losing a spouse, what the benefits are to beneficiaries, whether that be minor children or children with disabilities, understanding everything that's inside there. As you're walking through and looking at Social Security, doing it the right way, getting advice, because like Mike, what you said was the people at Social Security are there to take care of a transaction, not to give advice, not to ask many other types of questions. They just are ready to check that box. Your check will be direct deposited on this date. Making sure that you're doing it the right way, because these simple things, or they may seem simple, if you do them incorrectly, there can end up being a mistake that can end up costing you in the long run. Understanding all of the benefits, understanding longevity, understanding what exactly your goals are and what you're wanting to do, all play a role in pulling this plan together so that you get the outcomes that you want and you're able to live that life that you work so hard to be able to achieve. Did I summarize all those close? I was actually paying attention. So with that, Mike, I want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time. We truly value, hopefully in the future, we can get you back on one of these. I think there'll be a tremendous amount of people are really going to like hearing your insight when it comes to Social Security. Absolutely appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to sit down and walk through or answer any questions that may have come up through here. We have a ton of resources like Mike Graci of Blackrock. And with that, I just would like to say thank you, and we'll see you next week.
See you again.